meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, once again, for purposes of the call, this is the technical assistance call for early intervention, June 4th, 2015, reviewing revisions to the IFSP form. So this is what you're going to see today is very, very similar to the form you're using now. It has some revisions that will go into effect on July 1st, and the revisions are based on a few things. One, we get feedback throughout the year from service coordinator and EI directors on changes they feel would work better for the IFSP form. So we take note of those all during the year, and we've tried to incorporate those changes that have been requested within the revisions to the form. And then we've also had some rule changes within the state plan and procedural changes in the fiscal management and accountability procedures, and you guys have had a chance to see those when they've gone out for public comment, but some of those changes did result in us needing to make some revisions to the form. So here's what it's going to look like today, and I wanted to let you know that under the TA section of the TA call section of the website, we did have these posted, the slides, as well as the highlighted form that was marked, do not distribute. So you did have a chance to see that as well. So if you want to, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you each page of the IFSP with the highlighted changes. Not every page has a change, so those pages are not on there. And we'll talk through each of those changes, what they mean procedurally and why they were made. And then if you want to, you can print out the form and follow along as well. So we're going to start with page 1, and there's several changes to this page, and I'm going to start from the beginning and just walk through them. So if you look at the one change that is on every page based on your request is that we took out the black highlighting in the heading, so it would not use as much ink when you print it. So you'll notice on the very first page, there's a change under type of IFSP and date. We have added a check mark for transition plan. So you're going to check this box if the IFSP that's being developed is the one that contains the transition plan. And that was based on requests from service coordinators. We've also moved the checkbox for interim to the end because even though it is a requirement to have interim IFSPs available in federal regulation, we use it so very rarely in Colorado that we put it at the end instead of in the beginning. The field that says late reason was removed. This is still something that you'll collect in the data system, but it really isn't something that needs to be on the plan that is really primarily focused on a document for the family. And when we were reviewing this, we really tried to look at it through that lens. So this is the family's document. How can we really make it seem like that rather than just a form for data collection? Then under referred by, you'll notice that other is no longer a field. There still are some write-in blanks under some of the categories, but we've added home visiting program and a specification for which home visiting program has referred. Up to 24 months was added under the child's adjusted age for children that are premature. We added that wording because we still get quite a few questions about how long should we be adjusting the age for a child that comes in that has been born prematurely. So we've added that to that column. So now if you look over onto column 2, you'll notice that under the parent and legal guardian information, we've added the best method of contact, realizing that many parents have a preference for how they're contacted. They may not want to be called by phone, and so we've added that right there, and it's a write-in box. You can just write it in. And then the child's county of residence. So those are 2 additions to that field. The next one down, under the child lives with, you'll notice that we put after the age heading under 18. Now you're still going to note in this field all the members of the family that live in the home with the child, but you don't need to put like the grandmother's age You just want to put the age of the children that are under 18. Okay? The service coordinator was moved up to the very first person under the additional contact information, realizing that that is the number the family is going to refer to the most often, and so now the service coordinator is noted first. Administrative unit school district was changed from school district / BOCES to align with language in the rule and on the form where we use the word administrative unit, but we also wanted to keep school district because that is more commonly used by families. And then we've added an email contact under there as well. And that is all the changes on page 1. Page 2. Now, I want you to note that on the current form, page 2 is the daily routines and resources page. That's been moved in this new revised form. It now falls after the evaluation and assessment page, and this is because we wanted to really reflect the requirement that family assessment be conducted with parental consent for all eligible children. So we've moved it after the evaluation, assessment, and eligibility page. So what you're going to see now under general health, vision, and hearing status, we changed the wording that said, if so, what is it? After, does your child have a medical diagnosis? Yes, no. It was like, that just didn't seem very family friendly. If so, what is it? So now it says, if yes, please note here, and it says the same thing in the section for medical specialists. We've also changed the wording here under if your child is taking medication. Please note the medication and reason needed. That field was there already. It's just in more family-friendly wording now. The next change is under vision and hearing, and under both of those we added the words in the last 6 months, and we did that to clarify that if the screening for vision and hearing or testing hasn't been done recently, it needs to be redone. And then we also added the words regarding follow-up to the comment section. And the reason we put those in there is just to note that action needs to be taken if the child has failed the screen or test. So we want to know what is happening to make sure that that information is being collected for that child. Now, under physical development, these same changes, let me talk about the heading first. Under the heading for physical development, it did say on the prior revision to the form, movement and motor skills, and we changed that to say using hands for play, eating and activities, and moving to change position or location to make it more family friendly. The two headings that you'll see here, you're going to see these changes in all sections of development. So it used to say things I do well and things I find difficult or need help with. Now it's going to say things your child does well and things your child finds difficult. Once again, reflecting the fact that this is really the family's form and we want them to see themselves in this plan. It also should help better support documentation of the child's participation within routines rather than just having bulleted skills, which we got a lot of feedback that the previous heading really led to that kind of notation in the present levels of development. All right. So now we're jumping ahead to page 6, because I didn't show you that same change on all the present levels of development change, because the only thing that changed on the other pages was the things your child does well and the things your child finds difficult. Now, the change on page 6, you'll see this box now that says additional child and family information. There was always a box there, but it was its own page that said additional present levels of development and child and family information to be considered. We got a lot of feedback that we did not need a whole page for that and that it was duplicative to the additional activities section that was now on the concerns and priorities page. So now it's on the same page as adaptive development. Of course, As in everything, it'll roll over if you have a lot to type into adaptive development, but it just now is entitled Additional Child and Family Information. So this is where you're going to document any other information that's important to give a complete picture of the child and family, such as clinic-based services that they may choose to participate in, but that are not necessary to meet the strategies and outcomes on the IFSP. You can document informal groups or activities the child participates in, mom-taught groups, things like that. It's really an open space for recording important information to help get a clear picture of the child and family. Okay, now we're going to look at the new page 7, which was previously page 9, which is evaluation or assessment results. There are no changes to the top of the page where you have the team members' names, signatures, discipline, and the date of the evaluation or assessment, or the names of others. So you'll see that the first change comes here under methods and procedures required. Now, there used to be guidance language in this section that said, check all that apply, required if bolded. Additionally, the team must gather information using at least one method or procedure. We took that guidance language out because it was just confusing. And instead what we did was separate these into the required methods or procedures that are related to evaluation or assessment. Since those are really delineated as two separate activities within regulatory language, we've mirrored those regulations here. So what that'll mean is some of those may be checked at different times. You may check some of these boxes during evaluation, and then you'll check other boxes additionally during assessment. Then in the evaluation or assessment results columns, we've taken the first two columns on the form you're using right now, which were entitled No Delay or Less than 25% Delay. We've combined them into one column, Within Typical Range or Less than 25%. We had a lot of feedback on this, the changes to these columns. We had some stakeholders that really felt we should only be documenting where the child was demonstrating a significant delay, but we had an equal number of stakeholders that felt it was really important to note the areas in which the child was really within typical developmental range or had a slight delay as well. So we put that column in, but we combined it. The option to note standard deviation, which was in the heading for those ranges of delay on the current form, we removed. The reason for that was that we had lots of feedback that said you cannot really align standard deviations with percentage of delay. So now if you are using a tool for evaluation that provides a result that notes standard deviation, you should just put that in the comments box, just like you put anything else. For instance, the child is showing a significant delay in expressive language but not receptive language. Anything that helps better define the evaluation or assessment results can go there in the comments box. The eligibility section has not changed with the exception of a slight wording change under eligible to simply align it with the regulatory language. Okay. All right, so the new page 8. So this is what replaces the daily routines and resources page, which was the prior page in which typically information gathered through family assessment was documented. So we wanted to make it more clear, and we got lots of feedback about the clarity of documenting information gathered through family assessment. So this page is now where the information that's gathered through the facilitation of an approved family assessment tool is recorded. We've added wording at the top that can help explain the family assessment process to the family. Now we know that you guys are all doing that verbally and explaining to them why this is important. to individualize their plan, but we thought it was nice to put it on the form as well. And then you'll see that instead of saying, as on the current form, this information is shared voluntarily, we've added a separate sentence that's a little more family-friendly to explain the voluntary nature around family participation in this process. Then the next thing down on the page is where you actually note which of the approved tools you are going to be using, and you date it. Now, the next section down, this is where the bulk of the information is going to go. So you're going to note the routine. That could be getting up in the morning, whatever the family says. You're going to note that there, and then you're going to put enough information in the what does this look like box to give a clear picture of what that time of day looks like, including how the child's participating and the satisfaction of the family with how that time of the day currently looks or currently is going for them. So the reason we don't have routines written in there is because that you're going to get information about the routines in differing orders depending on which of the family assessment tools you're using. So it's really open-ended so that it works for both how the family shares information and how you at the Community Center Board are gathering the information. Now, there's boxes for 6 routines, and those can be expanded. Now, this page does not replace the protocol or the chosen approved family assessment tool. Just like evaluation results are noted within the present levels of development typically, results of the family assessment are noted here. Okay, this page has probably the least changes of any. Really, the only change on this page is that we have taken off the additional activities section. Now that's within the present levels of development additional information section. And instead you have a little bit more room to write. We also took off the guidance wording that now says this may include difficulties with eating, sleeping, playing, communication, and behavior. Because really this is where you're going to record the concerns gathered through family assessment or concerns that have arisen because of the evaluation and have been identified as concerns by the family. So this gives you a little more room to write. So the next page are the plan of action pages. These are really minimal changes. The changes are the same on all the plan of action pages in the revised form. That's currently pages 10 through 12. They're just minor changes in wording. We've added the words for your family to the top. What is the priority this outcome will address, just to keep it family focused. And then we've changed we to you, because this is the family's plan, in the what we see now or what you see now and outcome statement sections. And then in the strategies heading, we changed the word the, strategies selected to address this outcome within the child's everyday routines and activities to your. The next page with changes is the IFSP agreement page, and all the changes on this page are in the result of aligning with the new definition section in the state plan and new guidance in the fiscal monitoring and accountability procedures. So you'll see that up there now you're going to choose which model you're providing services within. You're going to choose either the primary service provider model, the multidisciplinary provider model, and the single service provider model. These are going to be defined further. You can see definitions for some of those in the state plan. They also will be defined further with examples in the IFSP instructions and the FMAP. Now you'll notice that another change is now there are check boxes for method, and I'm sorry we forgot to highlight those. Tracy and I were trying to make sure we highlighted everything and we missed something, doggone it. So you'll notice that now these are the methods you can choose for each service. So for each service, you're going to document the service. document the location in which that service is being provided, and then you're going to choose one of these methods: individual, co-visit, teaming, or supervision. Now, evaluation and assessment are not a method under the drop-down, but when you're going to bill them in the billing system, you can bill them as evaluation and assessment. And these will be further defined within the IFSP instructions in FMAP as well. Teaming and supervision. Teaming is a method that can be associated with all services, but it has to be associated with another method. So it can just be a standalone method. It should say early intervention service, individual, and then you might have a second early intervention service that notes teaming. Co-visit is what really replaces consult. We want them to be co-visits, denotes that two providers are going out together and talking about strategies to support the child and family in implementing those strategies for their child. And then supervision would only be a method that you would check for those services in which the provider is providing that service with a requirement for supervision. So say that you had an SLP assistant as the main service provider, and then she was being supervised by an SLP, then you would note that service there and check the box for supervision. And we will explain those more. Frequency, intensity, and individual and group are now their own columns. Before they were all collapsed together, and we did that actually just to align with regulatory guidance. The only other change on this page is under funding source, where other has been removed and CHP Plus has been added to align with the data collection. The IFSP agreement continued. The only change to this page is we added a heading, because it didn't have a heading before. So that's the only change to that page. The next page that you're going to see looks quite a bit different is this page, the periodic review or annual review of outcomes. Now, previously, this was just a periodic review page. In fact, it didn't actually have a title. So what this page is going to do is still you're going to review each outcome on the child's plan. Now, because of new requirements around how the data that we want to collect, we really need to know for each outcome on a child's IFSP whether that outcome has been met or not met. So for each outcome on the child's IFSP, you're going to check either met or not met. Now, that means that not only is that going to be done at the periodic review, but it's also going to be done at the annual IFSP as well. You're going to have to check whether those outcomes were met or not met. So that is a new step for your annual IFSP reviews. Then you're going to note the outcome, the wording from the outcome. Then you're going to note the progress, just a brief description, a narrative of the progress that's been made in making progress towards that outcome. Then in the right column, you're going to check either outcome met or outcome not met. If the outcome is not met, you can check outcome met, not met, and then just in the narrative where if outcome is not met, please explain, you can say the child didn't meet this outcome and we're not continuing with it. It's no longer a priority of the family. Well, just a description of why the outcome was not met and you aren't choosing to continue it. Or if the outcome is not met, you can check either continued or revised. So let's think about what that would mean. So if a child had not met their outcome and you're going to check continued, what that would mean is that the child has not quite met their outcome, but it's still important to the family and they want to continue to work on it as it is currently written. So you're just going to get continued and you'll put some wording to explain that under the explanatory guidance section there. Or you might click revised, and you're not going to click both. You're going to click one or the other, so you might note revised. So an example of an outcome that's not met but revised would still mean that the outcome is important to the family And perhaps the child has not met the outcome because it was just too ambitious. You know, we know more about the child, and it's important to the family. They still want to increase their child's participation in this activity or time of day, but it was just a little bit too ambitious. So then you can revise it to reflect a level of participation of the child that is accomplishable. So that would what it would mean to be revised. Now let me talk briefly about what it means if you're going to note outcome met. You're going to note that the outcome is met if the child has met the outcome as written. So even if they want to continue working on an outcome that's in the same vein, such as a higher level of successful participation, doing more of something that the original outcome noted, it's going to be a new outcome. It's not going to be revised. Because in that case, we want to say, yes, we wrote an outcome for this child and family, it was important to the family, and the child met the outcome. So we don't want to note that we've revised it if they've really met it. Okay, that's it on that page. If an outcome is discontinued, we got a question about that, then that outcome would not be met, and you would note that it was no longer an outcome that was important to the family, or the reason it was discontinued in the comments box. That was a question we had come in on the chat. Okay, the next page is the transition page. That's the new page 16. There are very few changes to this page. The main change is that we got feedback that this section that's highlighted was confusing before, because it had just a line of boxes and you checked which ones were appropriate, and really it was an either-or checkbox. So right now you check one or the other. You check either on the left-hand side that the AU was notified and the date of notification, or that the parent opted out of notification. And on the right-hand side, you're going to check either additional information was sent to the AU with parental consent, or the parent did not sign consent to send additional information. The only other changes to this page was some clarification to clarify that the signatures on this page are for the transition conference, because the plan is developed as part of an IFSP, and so the signatures for the plan are on the IFSP agreement page. Okay. Okay. So now I want to talk briefly about next steps, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So the next step for the revision to the IFSP form is that we will incorporate those same changes into the IFSP with Infant Focus. We are going to update the IFSP instruction manual to reflect examples and instructions for the new form. It will be translated into Spanish, and you know, we had an interesting conversation around this, because we get quite a lot of feedback from service coordinators that work with Spanish-speaking families that sometimes the wording on the form isn't quite right. So what we're hoping to do is pull in some of your expertise this year, and what I'd like to do is we will have a Spanish version available for use, but we'd really like for those of you that work with Spanish-speaking families to work with that form a little bit and give us some feedback on it through the end of August, so that we can really make that form work with for you as service coordinators and for the families that speak Spanish in this in your communities, because we know that there has been some problems with the previous translated form. And then, of course, the IFSP training will reflect the new form. The example that you get, the case study that we use, will reflect the new form and procedures, so people that are going through the IFSP training will see all of the new stuff. Is there a question in the chat? Okay. All right. So the next slide is the question slide. So we're going to answer the questions in the chat, and then we're going to open it up for questions as well. The language on the plan of action page, what is the priority for your family, seems awkward. Well, we wanted to always keep it for your family in there, and so if you have other suggestions, please let us know if you can think of something that would work better but still really keeps it family-centered. I have the same concern, Melinda. I just couldn't think of a better way to word it when we were looking through it. In what order should the periodic review page take place? I'm not sure I understand that question. The periodic review page. Oh, it's at, yeah, I see what you say. It's at the end, but it actually would go before the IFSP agreement page. So we'll make sure that it gets put in the right place. Okay, shall we open it up? We're going to unmute you.
All guests have been unmuted.
Okay. Somebody has got us on hold. Lovely music, but we can't hear anybody.
Not us, is it?
I don't know. Yeah, there you go. Whoever it was, you're off. Okay, are there any questions? I see there's another question. Just want to make, yeah, assessment or evaluation does not need to go in the supports and services grid.
We can't decide.
The evaluation documentation does not differentiate between no delay and a mild or moderate delay. The family may want to share with their doctor for referral. Well, you know, my answer to that would be, Melinda, that you can always write further information into the comment section if that would be helpful. Believe me, this was something we went round and round about, was how to document that on the evaluation and assessment page.
Can I add something?
Yep.
So the other direction that we're headed is we're really thinking in terms of the percentages of delay and thinking in terms of determining if there's a significant delay to determine eligibility and not so much around other pieces of that. That should occur with the family assessment and other documentation outside of the formal evaluation and assessment process.
Yeah, we went round and around with actually taking that column off and just noting where the child had a significant delay and putting it back on. So if further information, if you want to make further specifics around those areas of delay, please note those in the comments box.
Hey, Laura, can you actually bring up the page when people are asking questions? Can you bring that slide up for us?
Yes. Is the document locked, or can we customize by putting the child's name in the footer? It'll be just like the one on July 1st. Now, let me reiterate, do not use this form yet. On July 1st, it'll work just like the current form.
Oh, well, hopefully better.
Yes. We don't know. We can't swear to better, but it'll at least work the same.
Okay,
so, yes.
Go back and find the one with the percentages of delay.
Sure. One more. There you go. Okay, so what the question is referring to here is the within typical range column and less than 25%. That's only one column now.
Yep.
And I believe Melinda was saying it's sometimes helpful to delineate those. And so what I'd like to ask is that those kinds of details be included in the evaluation or assessment comments.
I don't know where right there underneath where you're pointing.
Yeah.
Okay. But just as a side note, if you're really talking about creating a family-friendly document,
yes,
I think a family really wants to delineate between my child has no delay or my child has a 20% delay. That is a huge deal to a family.
Okay.
And that's where you would put it. So you could put in this comment, no delay in adaptive, no delay in communication. Or
yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Roanna, and this was like, it's been a difficult decision to make on how to document those ranges of delay.
Sure. Okay, we have a question.
We'll make note of that.
Can you go to the one that says information gathered through family assessment page?
Yes, it's the very next page, Lenita. Yep.
Okay.
What's your question, Roanna?
All right, so just kind of outline for me, because we just went through our family assessment training. And we are working with our service coordinators on now when they're documenting on the IFSP to document and do descriptions around daily routines.
Yep.
So they're listening to the family assessment and they're documenting it on the IFSP. And then we are also filling out whatever protocol. So for us, it's the SAFER/RBI that has the routine, the rating, and the details. Why are we being asked to duplicate all of that information again on another page?
So you're now currently putting it into the present levels of development?
Yes, ma'am, that is our plan.
Yeah. I'm going to note that because we had some of that same conversation as well. And I think what the difficulty is that sometimes the present levels of development are primarily capturing evaluation information, and they're not containing the information gathered through family assessment. And so in an effort to really stress the need for that information, it's on a separate page. So I'm gonna make a note of that, Roanna, so we can talk about it a little bit more. Because you're doing the protocol and then summarizing the protocol into present levels of development.
Right, because I mean, and I know every community. We know that every community is different. And now with our switch that's happening with Child Find, where Child Find's doing the evaluation.
Yeah.
And we are not starting the actual IFSP document part of it until we have that second meeting with families. And we are training, in the process of training, where when we're documenting in present levels of development that we're no longer doing bulleted, developmental things, because we want the whole document to flow in alignment with the family assessment, because that's the purpose.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so just if we could have discussions that if we are doing that, train, and can start doing that well, obviously our vote would be not to have to reduplicate all of that on this page.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you, Roanna. And if you have ideas for how that might be better put together and still make sure the family assessment guides the process, I'm very open to hearing what we could do to make that better.
Okay, I'd love to chat with you offline a little bit about that.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, bye. Thanks. I'm done. Not bye, thanks.
Wasn't the other piece is that because we have 3 tool choices that we were trying to make this a page that could be used with
any tool.
Any tool.
Right. 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 But I see what Roanna's saying. We have to try and figure out a way to make sure that we're getting family assessment information and that it does guide the process, however that looks.
Right.
Okay.
Really, regardless of the tool that people are choosing, family assessment interview is being done well. And for a while been talking to us about no longer documenting in levels in what's happening now, developmental stuff, that it should be descriptions of the family. It should be irrelevant what tool is being used.
Yes, I agree with you. I just think we have a ways to go to get there.
Thank you.
Are we maintaining the protocol as part of the file?
I would suggest that you could maintain the protocol as part of the file. If it contains a lot more information than the IFSP, I think that is good. We haven't really made a decision on whether that should happen or not, but I'm finding that generally the protocols contain more information than what's documented on the IFSP, so I think it's a great idea to keep it as a part of the child file. We have a couple questions coming in the chat that I want to answer, and then we'll get back to the phone line. Jody asked, will we talk again about the teaming portion? So teaming here can be noted as a method for any service, but teaming can't be the only method. So in other words, you would have a service that's being provided, it might say primary service provider, individual service, and then you would also have teaming, because teaming is a separate type of activity. It's not direct service delivery with the child. Jody, does that answer your question? And we will try and explain that a lot more in the IFSP instructions, because I know it can be confusing. So type in there if you have further questions. Kent, the Spanish IFSP right now for this revised one is going to be the same as the one we have now. So right now it's not a bilingual document. That's a good suggestion though, and I'll make note of it. We've had that suggestion before. So I'm going to make note of it, but for July 1st it's going to just be a Spanish document. Jody. So we got a comment from Jody that said it would be nice to put some strengths and comments in that section. Could you tell me more about what section that is, Jody?
Yeah, under the, we were back, yeah, right in there. I mean, since.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, since since it's not divided into, you know, whether they're have any delay or not, it would be nice in that comment section to put some strengths.
Okay. So on the evaluation and assessment results. Great. That's a good suggestion. Okay, anything else? Oh, there's lots more. Sorry. On page 7. Uh-oh. She just cleared our chat. We just accidentally cleared our chat. So if people have not had their chat answered, and I think, Monica, you were the first one that had one in there, could you just say what you need to say over the phone or put it in the chat again?
Of course I can.
Thank you. What was your
on page 7 under methods and procedures required, there's a box that says use of multiple methods that you would check.
Right.
Wouldn't you check that every single time?
Yes,
like, I don't know why that box is there.
Well, because it used to be up in the heading. And so, in fact, most of these boxes are going to be checked every single time.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just
extra wasted box, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, we used to be in the heading, and so now we just put it in a box for continuity. But these are these are requirements. So you're really going to end up almost always with all those boxes checked.
Yep. Alrighty.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we got a new ones coming in now. Anyone on the phone? Yep, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's on the chat.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's a question about the hearing or vision, that assurance that it has been conducted. So that's referring to a child that may be coming in with eligibility already established through established condition. You still need to be sure that a hearing and vision screen has been conducted.
Okay, thanks.
DI teaming is no longer a separate service. It's going to say DI as the service and then the method as teaming. Does that make sense? So it really can be any service now with the method of teaming. It's not just associated with DI now.
Huh?
Laura. But we'll still have to put it on the cover sheet, right? On CCNS?
It needs to be on the IFSP agreement page, yes.
And so if you are doing teaming, if DI is not on the plan, you can check teaming under another service. And is
correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have to, if you have multiple services on the plan, do you have to check teaming under each one of those services? If
no, you just put it in one. Yeah, you're just going to put it in one, and if that's the case, then write it as developmental intervention, since that encompasses all services.
This is Maria at Inspiration.
Did that make sense, Vicki?
No, I'm sorry, it didn't.
It doesn't.
Okay, hold on, Maria. Let me just clarify. So, Nikki, if you have multiple services listed, so it's a multidisciplinary model, multidisciplinary provider model, so say you have speech-language pathology and occupational therapy listed, then you're going to write, and both of those providers are participating on the team, then in that case you're going to choose developmental intervention as the service for teaming, because it's not related to one provider or the other. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so you're saying if there's only one service on the plan and they will be participating in teaming potentially, that one service is listed, say for example PT, and you would check teaming for that service. You wouldn't need to list DI teaming separately.
Correct.
But if there are multiple services on the plan, those services get listed separately, and then there's an additional line where DI gets listed and teaming gets marked.
Correct. And if you don't want to do that, you can always list DI as teaming. Okay. All right. So Maria, I'm sorry. Can you tell me your question, and then we'll get back to the chat box.
Okay. Sorry. So when you guys reworded that the hearing and vision, if it's not done in six months, it needs to be done. What if the parents don't do it? Do you say at the meeting you ask them and it hasn't been done in the last 6 months, and then you say,
yeah, then it's really our responsibility in the early intervention system through evaluation or assessment to make sure that happens. So what I would suggest is that the service coordinator can help support them with accessing resources, or you look at a way to partner with your school district or other community agencies to have those hearing and vision screens available for families.
And is the test that the child fund uses, like that hearing machine and or the vision,
yeah, that's
and that
perfect.
Be used as? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Okay, and there are hearing and vision screening guidelines up on the website. So Maria, you can look at those and it'll tell you what is acceptable as hearing, what the protocol for hearing and vision screens are. And OIT is listed as one of those. Oh, is that right? An OIT?
Oh, OAE.
OAE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would want to be particularly careful if the primary area of concern was language and communication, right? And so if the family was coming in and that was their only true concern, we would want to make sure that hearing screen occurred.
So Amy is asking, when doing a new annual IFSP for an existing child, would you start with the annual review page to close out the existing IFSP prior to creating a new IFSP? You certainly could. I don't think it would really matter as long as you're reviewing those current outcomes. The difference on the services page, what's the difference between observation and co-visit? We don't have observation on the services page. So if it's two providers going in together, that would be co-visit. Observation isn't an allowable method, but I'm not sure that answered your question, Jean. So if you have further clarification, please add that to the chat. It would be the date you sent the notification. So the date sent is not necessarily the date the parent signed consent to send information to the AU. Monty's asking about the transition page. It would be the date you actually sent it.
Hey, Laura, this is Christy. I just want to clarify that there is no parent consent required to send over the notification to the AU. The parent only signs if they opt out of notification,
right,
and if you send additional information. So just want to make sure that everybody's clear about that.
Thank you, Christy. I totally missed that. Did that answer your question, Monty?
No, I missed it. I'm sorry.
Okay, so what Christy was saying is that you don't need parent consent to send the AU notification. So the top part of the form, so you would note the date filled on the date you sent that. You only need parental consent if the parent would like you to send additional information or if the parent opted out.
I mean, I understand that, but that's okay.
Which don't you understand?
No, I understand that. Like, we send the AU notification regardless of whether or not if the parent is signing.
Oh, so you're generally doing it all together is what you're saying?
We're doing it all together.
Yeah,
So
well, then it's the date you send all of it.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep. Oh, supervision and co-visit are the two things that Jean would like clarification about. Supervision is only I'm hearing a lot of, it sounds like someone is running an electric train, so there's a lot of noise. So co-visit is when two providers actually are going out together to the family's home. Supervision is when the primary provider is a paraprofessional or another type of provider that requires supervision to be provided. That's when you note supervision.
So I have a question about that. Sometimes logistically, you know, when we're there, we don't know who the provider is going to be, whether it's going to be a CODA and somebody that's going to need supervision, or if we can find, you know, an OT that doesn't need supervision. So how do we write that on the plan if we don't know who's going to be
because
available?
you're just going to have to document the service, and then if it turns out that the service provider is a paraprofessional, you're going to have to add that to the IFSP agreement page and talk with the family about that to assure that they understand that.
Okay. And then my other question is with taking out a consult, again, logistically, so my thought is that you're wanting to, instead of having a consult, say, for example, a DI provider is thinking that they need PT services but isn't sure, would like a PT to come in and have a look at the child. You're wanting them both to be there, but logistically we've had providers say trying to coordinate a visit, so that would be three, you know, the service coordinator and then two providers and the family trying to coordinate that visit. Providers have responded that, you know, co-treats are just a nightmare for them to schedule.
Then you would note them both as individual.
Okay, so you could still do like a one-time visit and it would be an individual?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there the potential for individual visits and co-visits? Do both boxes get checked for both services? No, you should be checking only one. If the co-visit is what is necessary, then you should check co-visits. You should only check one box. In the page regarding family assessment, required at a review and annual, no, it's only required right now at the initial. Family assessment is not required for reviews and annuals. You may do family assessment, and that's fine, but it is not required.
Laura, hi, this is Laura up at Foothill Gateway in Larimer, and I just had a clarifying question about the method.
Sure.
Currently, we write for co-visits if there are two providers and they might want to come together, but that every visit might not happen that way, but that for some visits during the month for the family, it might be good for both providers to go. So they are providing currently both individual services and co-visit services. So as of July 1, is that not an option anymore, that they either have to always co-visit or always go independently?
We honestly didn't talk about this, Laura. I'm going to be frank with you, because of the feeling that co-visits should be planned ahead of time and noted ahead of time. In that instance, I would say that you're going to have to click individual, and if one of those then becomes a co-visit, that would be okay. But I'm going to put this down as a note to talk about more, especially when Beth gets back from vacation, because honestly this question hasn't come up. So I'm going to make a note of it, Laura.
Okay, thanks for the follow-up.
Sure. Jody says, so we have families that have two providers, but a couple of times they do a co-visit. Yeah, right, that's what we're going to have to follow up on. Right now, I would say unless it's consistently a co-visit, you would mark individual. But we'll see if we can provide some further clarification on that. Are there more questions, Juanita?
Yes, this is Tracy with Blue Peaks.
Hi, Tracy.
The agreement page, there's individual, group, and then under the method, there's individual again. So what is the difference?
Okay, So you will get all of this when we revise the IFSP instructions. So when you see up on the method it says single service provider, that means there is one provider that's going out and to see the family, one provider only, and they are not a member of a team that has regular team meetings to share expertise and strategy. So say it's a family and they just have a speech therapist that's going out once a week, that's the only provider they have, and that provider is not a member of a team, then you would note single service provider. Under method, as a model, under method, individual means an individual one-on-one visit with the child and family.
Okay.
Oh, you're talking about individual or group, Tracy?
Well, I just didn't understand why it was there both.
So let me talk about individual and group is kind of a weird section that's in federal regulations, and that is referring to whether you are serving the child individually or within a group setting. In Colorado, children are rarely served in group settings. That would be if you had, say, several children that were all in the same early Head Start classroom and they had the same service needs and you were working with them together in a group. Then that's when you would note group. That is very rare. 99% of the time you're going to write an I there for individual.
I know at the IFSP training, you guys do that really nice sample of the IFSP with things, written in there. Is that going to be available for us just to see an example? Because it's pretty confusing.
Absolutely. Yes, we can do that. Because that'll be changed in the IFSP form, so we can have that as an example as well. Regarding the transition plan page versus the transition conference. Okay, we're on that page. What's the question?
Laura, this is Heather.
Hi, Heather.
Hi. I'm wondering on page 1 where there's a list of type of meetings.
Yeah.
If it's transition plan or if there needs to be a checky box for transition conference.
Oh, I see. No, because the transition plan is required to be done at the same time as an IFSP meeting. The transition conference can take place outside of an IFSP meeting. That's why there's not a box for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
This is Maria again. So if you had a transition conference, you wouldn't be completing a new IFSP.
So a transition conference is a required part of transition. So generally what would happen is you're developing the transition plan as part of the IFSP meeting. If you have a representative from the school district there, that's going to be the conference as well. Or you could take the transition plan, meet with the school district representative and the family later, and that would be considered the conference. So in other words, a transition plan should always be aligned with an IFSP date. A transition conference does not have to be.
Okay, so I could have done that transition plan with the family and then later do the family scheduling because it wasn't together because they didn't have the AU and the papers were not signed or...
Yes, just make sure that you're within that 90-day, within the 2-year, 3 months, or 2 to 2-year, 9-month timeline. The conference still has to be within that timeline.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And even if the AU cannot show, if they cannot attend, if you've invited them, you need to go ahead with the conference.
All right. Well, it sounds like the questions are dying down. Please, if you have suggestions, if you have questions, if you'd like a personal follow-up, send us an email so we can do that because we want to make these changes quickly so you're able to have everything in place on July 1st, including the IFSP instruction guidebook, which is going to take some time.
So
now,
I had a quick question about the new data system and was the IFSP going to roll out with the data system or?
we're going to talk about that in just a few
If you
minutes.
can hold that question for 2 more slides, and we'll answer that question.
I thought you were done. That's why.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, we have a couple more slides that I'm turning the next slide over to Ashley because she has an important announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. So just want to remind you guys to provide any feedback on the EI Coordinator's Handbook no later than June 15th. The handbook is currently residing on the Padlet for the statewide meeting, but I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat box too, so you guys can go ahead and access it there. So any feedback, you guys can go ahead and just send me an email.
Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
And then we have some more important information, and I am begging, asking, pleading, encouraging, whatever it takes, please go to your links on your Community Centered Board website and assure that all the documents that you have, all your public awareness materials and information is current and reflects our correct mailing address, emails, phone numbers, contact information for not only your local contacts, but for EI Colorado as well. This is a really critical piece that we need to have folks do related to procedural safeguards that we talked about at the statewide meeting. We've got to have accurate information on your website. So please take time in the next few days to do that. Thank you so much. And now, Christy.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to give a quick update. I'm working on a communication brief that will be sent out shortly, talking about specifics around the new data system and the timelines and training plan, that kind of thing. We did have a little glitch, as I'm sure won't be a surprise to many, but we won't be rolling out the system July 1. It'll be closer to August 1 or September 1. We heard you. We've had a few kind of a technical slowdown, but we also heard you very clearly at the statewide meeting that you know, you feel rushed sometimes when we're trying to roll things out July 1. So we will probably, you'll get more information about probably starting the rollout of training in July, preparing for the rollout of the data system. And I think that should ease some anxiety for many people and be a smoother implementation of the data system. So watch for the communication brief and it'll have more detail. And we are having the discussion that more than likely the IFSP will, the IFSP probably will roll out at the same time as the data system. But again, watch for detail. We've started the build, we're moving forward, and we're getting more and more information every week. Thanks. And yes, Sue, the unicorn has not landed.
Go to the next one. Well, thank you, everyone. I know this was a ton of information when I was working on it. It was kind of giving me a little bit of a headache. But please let others, particularly service coordinators, know and provide any feedback. I need feedback if you have additional feedback very quickly, because the IFSP instruction manual takes an extensive time to revise, plus we have to revise the training for July. So please give me feedback. Thank you again. I wanted to let you know that there's some sort of an emergency here. Sorry, I apologize for all the sirens. I wanted to let you know that the new revision, the newly revised IFSP form will be on the website for your use beginning July 1st, as will all the other updated forms. So as always, on July 1st, get rid of your old forms and use the new forms.
Now, Laura, if they need to train on this form, can they use what we were sharing today to go through it with their service coordinators?
Yes, and just knowing that based on your feedback, there may be some minor changes. Are there any final questions before we let you go today?
Okay, well, thank you for joining us today, and if you have any questions that you want to ask offline, you can contact our staff. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.